Hello everyone. I would like to invite you to be fully engaged in this teaching as we explore the narrative recorded in Mark 14. In these verses, you encounter Jesus facing his destiny with a mix of sorrow, determination, and honest vulnerability. He does not hide from what must come, but meets it head on, fully aware of the cost of his sacrifice. Now, as you read these words, please let this account of his resolute surrender to God's plan remind you to rely on divine grace when human strength falls short. At the Last Supper, Jesus gathers those closest to him and prepares them for what lies ahead. He speaks plainly about the betrayal that will soon be revealed and introduces a new way for his followers to remember him. By sharing bread and wine, he declares that these are not mere symbols, but a representation of his body and his blood. This act is not just a farewell meal. It is a deliberate invitation to remember that the price for your mercy is steep. When you partake in this remembrance, you are drawn into an event that calls you to acknowledge the cost that transcends easy comfort. The narrative then shifts to the Garden of Gethsemane. Here, Jesus steps away from his disciples and faces the overwhelming weight of the hour that awaits him. In the quiet of that night, he wrestles with the burden of what is to come. His prayer is direct and it is moving. He asks if there is any possibility to let this suffering pass, yet he still ends his plea with the simple submission of, "Not what I will, but you will." In this raw moment, you see a true meeting of human frailty and divine resolve. Jesus shows that even when fear and sorrow pressured him, trusting in God's plan was not about ease or comfort, but about obedience and surrender to a greater purpose. This passage portrays Jesus as a flawless Messiah, and it also represents him as a man who felt deep pain and anxiety, yet chose to align himself completely with the Father's will. His honest struggle in Gethsemane invites you to consider your own times of struggle. Instead of turning inward or seeking escape through your own limited strength, you are called to lean into the assurance that there is a purpose beyond what you can see. This trust does not come from a denial of your feelings, but from the courage to release them into the care of a loving God. With that in mind, please go and read Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 after this video finishes. Now, the events in Mark 14 remind you that the journey towards redemption is not measured by the absence of difficulty. Instead, it is marked by a willingness to embrace life's heaviest moments with an open heart to Jesus. Every word spoken at the Last Supper and every tear shed in that lonely garden were part of God's sovereign plan for redemption, revealing that suffering was not the end, but the pathway to salvation. Rather than seeing your struggles as meaningless hardships, recognize that God is at work, using even the darkest moments to accomplish His perfect will, as long as you have committed and surrendered your life to Him. Now, John Stott once remarked that the cross of Christ is the meeting point of God's justice and God's love. Now, his words capture the heart of what Mark 14 reveals. The cross was the culmination of a divine plan where accountability and mercy intersect. When you let this truth sink in, it reminds you that his suffering was not without purpose. With us as flawed humans, though, hardship for most of us often results from our sin, whether it be from our own disobedience or the brokenness of the world. Yet God, in His mercy, can use even self-inflicted hardships to draw you closer to Him and accomplish his redemptive work. You see, there may be days when you feel overwhelmed by the pressures of your own life. Perhaps you have experienced moments when the future seems completely uncertain and every step feels heavy. In times like those, the example of Jesus in the garden can be a quiet reminder that true strength is found not in denying your pain, but in surrendering it to a care that is far greater than your own. Jesus' honest prayer in the dark of night shows that vulnerability, and it's not about a sign of weakness, but an invitation to trust in God Almighty. I encourage you to take time this week and to return to Mark 14. And as you encounter the image of Jesus in Gethsemane, remember that he did not shrink from his suffering. Instead, he embraced it, knowing that each moment of despair was a step toward a destiny that would bring hope and life to many. This invitation is not a call to seek a life free from pain, but an encouragement to lean into Jesus in every struggle. Think about the ways you might be tempted to rely solely on your own strength when hardships strike. Remember the possibility that by laying your burdens at the feet of one who understands every sorrow, you may discover a quieter, steadier courage. There is power in admitting that you do not have all the answers and in trusting Jesus. Such surrender does not diminish your worth. It affirms that you are cared for beyond measure. So, as you continue along your life's path, hold fast to the image of Christ at Gethsemane. Let his example guide you when fear creeps in and when the weight of life seems unbearable. In those moments, remember that every tear and every sigh is known by God who walks with you. His willingness to face even the darkest hour is an invitation for you to step forward with a heart that is honest and open. Now, I hope that this teaching and words in Mark 14 becomes a source of strength in your life. I hope you find in these words a living encouragement to trust beyond what you can see or what you can control. So, in the midst of life's uncertainties, let your heart rest in the promise of a love that endures, a love that will meet you where you are. I'll see you next time for Mark 15. And as always, thanks for watching.